Welcome to Living Rich Sirop. Living Rich was already taken, so I had to include my whole name, Living Rich Sirop. And there's a reason for it. I had made it. I had become a very successful game and talk show producer. I had made a ton of money and I fell flat on my face. And that is the reason I got into self-help. I needed to write a book to remind myself of who I was. I was looking for a self-help book written from somebody who had fallen flat on their face, but every book I read was just another book about somebody who had made all their millions by the time they were 20 or had it all figured out. And I realized that oftentimes when we go back and look at our success, we forget all of the falls that we had along the way. So I had to remember what it was like to live like Rich Sirop. I had to remember what it was like to be me and what made me so successful in the first place. When I'd fallen flat on my face and I had no money and I was going through a divorce and the place I was renting was being sold, I was really down in the dumps, and I sort of forgot that I had all of this greatness in me. But writing that book reminded me of what I had. And when I started writing that book, the first chapter, I said, I'm going to remember my journey along the way, and at the end of this year, I'm going to make $225,000. And I remember it was March or April, and I still hadn't made a penny. And I was struggling. I was struggling financially. I was struggling mentally at that time. But I kept on writing. I kept on believing. And then slowly the money started to come in. A job for $10,000, another job for $30,000. And it just seemed impossible, though. Even if I had made my rate for the rest of the year, I wasn't going to reach that $225,000 mark. December rolled around, and I was at $190,000. And I remember thinking, well, you know what? If I don't actually make this money, that's not the point. I made $190,000. That's good enough. If you think 225 had to be the number because I manifested 225, then you don't get what I'm doing here. And then on December 20th, I got a call from a development company offering me a job in development for $35,000, as a freelancer, which brought my number to exactly $225,000. The book worked, the self-help worked, and I remembered what it was like to be me. I remembered all of the things that got me there, because everything that you want in your life, it already exists inside of you. I think a lot of times people start to try to imitate somebody else. I tell this story about when I was younger. My mom bought me this pair of shoes that were Velcro, and they were no-name and generic, and I needed cleats, and she bought me these no-name shoes from a place called Ames, which was kind of like Kohl's, but even like more like Kmart almost. And so I had to wear these shoes, and I was very embarrassed, and I didn't want to go to the baseball game. My mom said, it's not the shoes, it's the person inside of them that matters. And so I went to the game, and I hit a massive home run. And then the next game, there were two kids wearing those same shoes. They had gone out and bought those same generic shoes, thinking that it was the shoes. But they didn't hit home runs because it was not the shoes. It was the person inside of them that counts. And that's what I had to remember when I wrote that book, when I started to rebuild myself, when I became a coach and started studying neurolinguistic programming. It was all about remembering who I was, remembering that it's just one small step at a time, remembering that karma is a real thing, and what you put out into the world, you get back, remembering to continue to march forward and to believe in yourself. And those things on paper, once you see them and you start to write them and start to practice them, you start to see results, and that's exactly what happened. So today is the first inaugural episode, and today's topic is going to be there is no finish line. This is something I love to talk about, and I love to share with my clients. So many people live life like there is a finish line, and once they get whatever they're after, suddenly they'll be happy and everything will be all right. The problem with that is when they get there, if they're still not happy inside, if they haven't found joy and peace and contentment and presence, they get to the finish line and they're even more devastated because they realize that didn't fill the need that they had. The finish line will never fill the need that you have. It just can't happen. Even in TV, so many celebrities, this is what happens with celebrities that you work with. Not everybody, but a lot of them they come in and they're miserable, and you think, how can you be miserable? You have fame, you have fortune, people adore you, you've got everything you want. You just drove up in your Porsche, and you got your designer clothes, and you're going on vacations, and people want to take pictures with you. How can you not be happy? And the reason is they were trying to fill something often, and when they got there to that finish line, they didn't fill it, and that made them really unhappy. That's why you see so many people end up having drug addictions and becoming alcoholics and sex addicts, because they just didn't get what they thought they were going to get from reaching that finish line. That's why you can't live life like there is a finish line. It's like those, I don't know if you've ever seen those Greyhound dog races. We had those when I was a kid growing up, and the dogs all line up, and there's that mechanical rabbit, and the rabbit just whirls around the track. It whirls around the track, and the dogs just keep chasing it, thinking they're going to catch that rabbit there. They just don't know that it's a mechanical rabbit. They race after race chase this mechanical rabbit that they're never going to catch. When you think that there is a finish line in life, you're chasing a mechanical rabbit. You're not going to catch it. It's not going to happen. And so I've had my own versions of that. I was a stand-up comedian, and I got into stand-up comedy. I thought, this is great. People are congratulating me all the time. They want to take pictures with me when they leave the club. You're getting big laughs. But really, what it was about was me trying to show people that I was worthy. It was me showing my dad, who loved David Letterman when I was a kid. My dad would work in a factory all day, and he'd come home, and he would watch David Letterman, and he'd laugh and laugh. I could hear him in the other room while I was in bed laughing. And I used to think, someday I want to make somebody laugh like that, because I loved my dad. I knew he worked really hard. And the fact that David Letterman could do that for him, I wanted to do that for somebody, because, he did it for my dad. And I also wanted to show my dad how great I was. I wanted to show him how worthy I was. And then I had a tough breakup when I was younger too, and I wanted to show that person how worthy I was. And so anybody who ever didn't believe in me, whether it be another producer, a coworker, or an ex, they were all fuel for the fire of me becoming super successful and reaching this finish line, which was stand-up comedy. And I started to make it. I was starting to get passed at clubs, and I was doing local events, but getting small amounts of money to do it. And I remember on a car ride to Long Island, talking to the other comedians, and it was so dark. Everybody was so dark and damaged and just trying to fill these needs. And I didn't know at the time that not feeling good enough was even a thing. I mean, I wasn't trained as a coach. I didn't know what a core emotional need was. I had no idea. I didn't know what a limiting belief was. I just know these people were damaged, and they were not happy, and they were not going to be happy, and all they wanted to do was complain the entire ride. And I thought to myself, is this what you want? I mean, so you get to the finish line, you're a famous comedian, and you're on the Tonight Show, and maybe you get a sitcom, and this is going to be your world, though. These are the people you're going to be around. And don't get me wrong, some of the people in comedy are really amazing, incredible people, but anybody in the world of comedy will tell you that most of it is a total shit show. So I realized, no, that's not a finish line I want. And then I started to try to get healthy. And I remember I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to lose, 30 pounds. And I did. I lost 25 pounds. And I felt good. I looked good. But then what happens after you lose weight? After a certain amount of time, you slowly start to gain it back, because what you were chasing wasn't losing weight. You just wanted to feel good about yourself. And so the lesson is that if you're chasing a finish line, you're not going to get there. You have to feel good internally. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and understand that you are good enough. And here's the thing, by the way, about being good enough, just so you know. And every single person I coach, I shouldn't say everybody, because, it's probably not every single person, but most of the people I coach, they have the same belief. I have it too, which is I'm not good enough. And where does that come from? Where does that come from? And what I've learned through asking questions, through doing timeline therapy, which is an NLP technique that we do, usually it's just a subconscious protective device. The feeling of I'm not good enough in your subconscious is protecting you from pain, because at some point in your past, you tried something and you weren't successful at it, and you felt embarrassed. And so your subconscious said, oh, we can't let this person feel that way again. So we need to put in the belief that they're not good enough so that they stop trying and then therefore no longer experience pain. So when you think about a belief like I'm not good enough, and you start to do what's called chunking up, and you ask, for what purpose do you not feel good enough? It's usually the answer is, I guess it's to protect me. And what's the purpose of protecting you? I guess it's to make me happy. And what's the purpose of making you happy? I guess it's to make me feel joy. And what's the purpose of you feeling joy? I guess that's my purpose. My purpose is to feel joy. So when you actually think about even the belief of I'm not good enough, or any belief that you have inside of you that has been holding you back, oftentimes it's just created by your subconscious to protect you from pain. But guess what? You were not 5 years old anymore. You're not 5 years old. You didn't, have a teacher tell you that your paper wasn't good. You can sustain that. You have to. You have to be able to take things not working. There's no such thing as failure. I don't believe failure is a thing. I believe it's just another learning. Every step of the way is another learning towards whatever it is you're after. But if you can't take feedback, there's no failure, there's feedback. If you can't take feedback, how are you going to grow? And if your subconscious is constantly trying to protect you by saying, hey, you're not good enough, hey, you can't love, you're nothing, or whatever you're telling yourself, these stories that you're telling yourself, they've been put there to protect you. You don't need to tell yourself that story anymore. You are good enough. You are okay. You are capable. And you are sometimes not going to get the results that you want, and that's okay. That's learning. That's how you move forward. Without learning, there's nothing. Wouldn't life be boring if we had it all figured out as soon as we came out and we just were like, okay, we all know everything. We all have all the answers. It would be terribly boring. That's not the way the universe works. That's not why we're here. This is a learning environment. And even Edison had to try, 2,000 times before he actually was able to discover the light bulb. Any great invention, you hear the stories of how many failures, feedback, that they experienced before they got to the point of the thing working that they wanted to work. And if you've ever even tried something new like skiing or playing guitar or anything that you've tried, axe throwing, I don't care what it is, you're decent pretty fast, but to get good, it takes a massive amount of patience and practice, and you have to face that feedback. I play guitar, and I will tell you, I've been facing feedback on the F chord for 7 months, and that's what happens. I play, sometimes I hit it, and sometimes I don't, but there will come a day where my brain will just be wired to hit that chord perfectly, and then I'll be facing feedback on something else on the guitar, and life works the same way. You have to be okay with feedback. You have to be okay with things not working out, because when you're not going to take chances. And if you're not taking chances, you're not growing. And what's worse than knowing all the answers is not knowing all the answers and giving up. You can't give up. You have to continue to fight, and you have to continue to move forward. And that's just the way it is. I mean, every single person I ever worked with in TV who was successful, I'm talking about celebrities, that's the one thing they had in common. They were okay with feedback, even if they didn't like it, even if they made them angry. I remember Regis Philbin at one point on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He had a question, and it was which one of these deserts had red sand, and he mistakenly read it, which one of these deserts has red sand. He said, which one of these deserts has red sand? And if that were me, I would have ran for cover. I would have hid my face. I would have turned beet red. Regis was so okay with feedback that he just continued to move through it, and he made it, and he turned what would have been a disadvantage for almost anybody into an advantage by reading all of the choices as dessert. Is it the Sahara dessert, the Mojave dessert? And the audience was laughing, and what? You've never made a mistake before? He turned it into a whole bit. We didn't even have to do a pickup on that. It was so funny. And that's what greatness is. Greatness is understanding that you are okay, and you can continue to move forward, and just understanding that it's about trying and the effort and taking one step at a time, not trying to climb the whole mountain with one leap. A lot of people will have an idea in this. They'll say, "Oh, I'm gonna go and become, the world's best comedian," and they'll just go crazy for like a month. They'll be hitting every club. They'll really be doing big action, action, and then they'll hit a wall, and they'll give up because they're fatigued. You can't sprint to success. Success is not a sprint. It is one step at a time. And the people that make it are the people that know that. The people that show up every day. They don't give up. They're not afraid to have feedback. When feedback happens, they just get back on that road and continue to march forward. When the storm clouds come, they don't run for cover. They stay on the road, and they one step after another. They're not sprinting because they'll get exhausted, but they're okay. They're okay walking one step at a time. So understand that life there is no finish line. There is zero finish line in life. And look at life as stepping stones. I tell people all the time, clients, my kids, anybody who will listen to me, that when you are climbing a mountain, and I do a lot of hiking, you always see the next step after you take the step before it. So you can't look at like there's 10,000 steps to the top of a mountain. No, there's not 10,000 steps. There's 10,000 first steps, which is really one first step over and over again. What's the first thing you can do? And then what's the next first thing you can do? And then what's the next first thing you can do? And you can have like resting points. When you go on a hike, you do rest. So maybe you not finish lines, but resting points in the stepping stones. So if you want to get really healthy, maybe a resting point is losing 20 pounds. Maybe another resting point is running a 5K. Maybe another resting point is becoming a rock climber. Maybe another resting point is doing a triathlon. So you're never hitting the top of the mountain and then saying, "Oh, wow, like I've already climbed the mountain. Now what? This isn't as good as I thought it would be." Instead, look at it as like these checkpoints along the way. No finish lines, but just checkpoints. Don't be like the greyhound. You're not a dumb greyhound. I mean, not that greyhounds are dumb, but come on, they're chasing a mechanical rabbit. You don't need to chase a mechanical rabbit around the track. Understand that your life itself is the journey. There's no finish line, because every single day is the most important thing in your life. The thing that happened in the past 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's just a million right nows ago. And the thing that you're worried about in the future is just a million right nows from now. So don't focus on those things. Don't focus on something way off in the future. Don't focus on something way, way back in the past. Instead, just be present right now, one step at a time. It's a million first steps. Remember that, and you will have all of the success. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I'm happy that I'm doing it. I'm going to share everything I can with you. At times I'll repeat myself, but you know what? Maybe the lesson that you need to learn is in whatever that repeated message. And I do believe the universe works through us. So hopefully you got some messages that really are helpful to you today. And hopefully, even as I speak, I'm reminding myself of things that I need to remember as well. I will see you next time on Living Rich Sirop.